Hi there, I'm Ben Pearson. Welcome to the Tech World Human Skills Podcast. Every episode we talk through how to thrive in the tech world, not just survive. Now, if you want me to work with your team, just give me a shout. I love to help teams be more influential, memorable and successful with their stakeholders. Head over to www.techworldhumanskills.com to book a chat. Hi everybody and welcome to the Tech World Human Skills Podcast. Now, we've got another great episode for you today. We're talking about a leadership 101, basically. Let me tell you where this came from. So I just finished doing some work with a big client on technical storytelling, and they said, Ben, can you do a series for us on leadership 101? And I said, of course I can, I'd love to. So I sat down and I brainstormed, some key, leadership 101 things. I thought I need to get some other ideas and some ratification. And so the person that we've got today was, probably fourth or fifth call. No. First call to go and get his opinion and get his perspective as well. And so we thought we'd talk about some of those leadership 101 things. So please, will you welcome to the podcast, Ben Caird. Ben, it's
Hello.
Wonderful to have you with us.
Lovely to be here. Thank you for the call.
Yeah,
I think.
First call,
Yes,
good.
Honest.
No, it's brilliant to have you with us. I think this is maybe a fourth or something like that podcast.
Yeah.
Definitely a friend of the show.
Indeed.
Like I said, because then I'd have to say you're my friend, right? So friend of the show. Yeah, friend of the show.
Yeah.
So it's lovely to have you with us. Just for people that maybe haven't listened to any of the episodes with you in before, do you want to give us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I'll give you the very potted, history. I've been leading people managing for 15 plus years, working in IT software for 25 years. And yeah, probably the last 10 years, pretty large groups, support, operational, customer facing teams. So
Yeah. And of course, years ago, we used to sort of co-manage a team, didn't we? We had different parts of a similar team. So we worked very closely together in leadership before we all went our separate ways and did many other different things.
I managed to escape.
Yeah.
And yet here we are.
And so the idea of this episode really is it's about core leadership skills. So this might be really applicable if you are an individual contributor looking to develop your leadership skills, if you're a new manager, or if you just want to sharpen the saw, actually, and you're a seasoned pro, just to sharpen that saw, hopefully. This is sort of some core leadership skills that we thought would be useful.
Absolutely. And I think leadership isn't just people management. You can be a leader, as you say, an individual contributor with no aspirations to manage people, or indeed one that wants to take that path.
Yeah. So when we were thinking about, what we're going to talk about in this episode, one of the key things that we thought is a foundation for everything else is trust, and that the team that you're leading, the people that you are leading, trust you. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. And in fact, there was a book that came out quite a long time ago now, but I remember that both of us had read it when we were co-leading a team, and that was called The Servant Leader, and it was by a chap called James, I think it's Altry, something like that. And in there, he talks about this, and he talks about a great way of building trust as being the 5 ways of being. And so I think this would be a really good way to kind of hang our thoughts, maybe hang some stories, some experiences we've got on building trust. So let me go through what he talks about as the 5 ways of being as a leader. He said the 5 ways of being are: be authentic, be vulnerable, be accepting, be present, and be useful. And I think those resonated with both of us as quite a nice way of thinking about it. So I wonder if over the next few minutes we can sort of unpack each of those, what that means, and maybe think about some examples from our leadership career and try and bring it to life with a bit of colour. Yeah,
and a lot of that hopefully will come back to me. It's been a while since I read the book, but those 5 resonate. Yeah. I think if I was playing devil's advocate, thinking about your listeners, it could sound soft.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is we still have to deliver results. So I think the hopefully we can bring it to life a bit. Being having all of those things, if you don't dig in, drive results and business outcomes and all of that, it doesn't mean a huge amount, right? So I think I often think about the Venn diagram of how you do those things, i.e. you create the fabric or the culture or the environment for people to do their best work.
Yeah.
And then you have to drive the business results, and it's how you get as much overlap as you can, really. So hopefully that makes some sense.
No, I think it does. Well, let's start to dig into it then. So the first way of being that he talks about, which helps build trust, and then through that trust, you can generate your results because you've got a well-empowered team that are doing good stuff, is be authentic, which is quite a buzzword. What does that mean to you, and how does that sort of come to life?
What it means to me is working in line with your values, I think, which again is a little bit easy to say and often harder to do. I also think it's about understanding a bit about who you are. So I think authenticity can increase through your career as you get more comfortable in your own skin, and as we all pick up things that we like from leaders that we look up to, but you have to work out what you can use that is authentically you, and what you maybe have to put to one side because it's not the sort of thing you can directly deliver on. So I think it's around values, trying to be, I think a lot of the people certainly that I work with over the last decade or more would see the same Ben inside and outside of work, really. Maybe slightly different language or different humour, but actually pretty congruent with who I am and how I go about things, and making sure that we do things in the right way. So,
and I think that's sort of the foundation is firstly about knowing yourself, isn't it? So you've got to spend a little bit of time making sure that you understand yourself, and you can think of that from a values perspective, from a strengths perspective, and from a weaknesses perspective. And I think all of those kind of go together. And the values are like, right, well, what are the things, like, for example, maybe integrity or honest, working in an environment where people are honest and don't lie, and that is a true value to me. And therefore, I wouldn't want to be in a place where maybe they don't hold some of those similar values. And if you are in a place like that, you try to maintain that authenticity, that those values that can be a real struggle if your values are different to the values of everybody else that you're working with.
Yeah, and I think maybe for newer leaders, things like performance management or having some of those hard conversations, or we talk about conflict a lot, don't we, in the sort of training and things for leaders. Some of those things maybe you can step back from, or not go as real time perhaps in terms of feedback and things like that. I think I often think now being a parent as well kind of helps, because I've got two boys, and it's not about being their best mate, it's about being their dad. And I think that's kind of like the stewardship, if you like, you have as a leader, is how do you talk to people and be really direct and open, but with that foundation of trust. So I think authenticity is about just being able to be pretty direct and open, and hopefully the trust allows you, the relationship allows you to do that.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? Because we all hate, like, if somebody's really fake, really nothing. Oh, my this leader, you can tell he's just giving me one face, but he really thinks this. Duplicitous, or, it feels like he's saying something else behind the door, and you all hate to work for people like that. So I think it's important that you continue to do that. As you then start to lead more, actually, you're not one of those people that you've always hated for years.
Yeah, I think it's sort of owning things, isn't it? It's like, if you're going to talk to somebody about something, like, I think this because of that.
Yeah.
Not I've heard this, and it's not me that's saying it, but I think, it's like, well, let's have a proper conversation, be more direct. And some of that's confidence, some of that's personality type, some of that's just, years of doing it, I suppose. But
let's move on to the next one. So be authentic, first one. Second one, be vulnerable. What is that all about?
I think really just almost sort of leading with when you get it wrong. So I think often when you pick up if I think about it, multiple companies, multiple jobs, roles, different teams, when you're trying to build trust, you want to show up as who you are. We've touched on authentic. And then you want to make it safe for people to get it wrong or to challenge, right? And so there's a few different things there. I've had in fact, I got an example from some time ago, but there was one particular person that was one of my direct reports. He was a leader of a reasonably sized group, but he would be the one that would always challenge me in meetings in front of everybody. And some of the other team, the rest of the team, actually spoke to me one-to-one on, there's different ways to do those things. And I said, no. Like, I consider him my mirror because he will tell me.
Yeah.
But the beauty of him telling me in front of all you, as long as we understand, he makes it safe for everyone to do that. So I think, different people will lead in different ways. You can say pretty much, unless you're going to be really negative and not constructive, and that's different. But if you're challenging and you've got a position and you've got something to add, I think that's, so for me, vulnerability is about almost encouraging that and not shutting people down and making sure you hear from people, even if it's directly on you. And then I also think owning mistakes. So sometimes I've got a couple of examples, but projects where we've said we are going to go this way, and then we've had to go, and I'll be the first to go, look, all right, we've tried this. Broadly, we're in the right direction, but we need to make these changes. That's on me, but thanks, let's go. Yeah. Let's pivot slightly and go off.
And that's it, because you want people to try things and experiment and be innovative. But to do that, it's not all going to work out.
Yeah.
And so if you create a space where people can fail,
yes,
and you're happy to say, well, I fail. Well, in the spirit of vulnerability, we are on take 2 of the podcast, aren't we?
Because you failed.
We failed yesterday. Yesterday, I tried to do something different and tried to use a different setup so that it would hopefully create some some clips a bit easier. And it all went wrong. The audio was wrong. So we sat here and recorded an entire episode yesterday.
Yes.
I got it all wrong. I tried something new, got it all wrong, and failed. And so it's that, saying, okay, that's all right. That's all right to do that. Now, there were consequences. We both had to double the amount of time.
Yeah.
You've had to very kindly come in and do the recording again. I didn't feel great about failing. But to then say, well, okay, that's all right, because then that creates a space for other people to fail.
Yeah.
And the other thing is,
this is working this time, though, right?
Well, I hope so. Yeah. Let me look around. It looks like it's recorded. So if and again, I quite often like to think about leadership for people that you've been led by, and then what your behaviour is when you then become a leader. And when you've got that leader that it's like, it's my way or the highway, I know what's best, you just do what I say. I'm sure we've all worked for people like that, or been in group projects with people like that. You think, well, there's all these smart people that have got so many other skills that is not contributing as wholly as they could, because this person has got no vulnerability. They're saying, I've got an idea, I've got a plan, I want it to go this way. You minions just do what I want you to do.
Yeah, I think sometimes there's a time and a place, isn't there? Like we've got to dig in and we've got to get stuff done.
Yeah.
But I think what we're talking about here is not picking up a team and having 3 months to deliver whatever it might be. We're talking about how do you build sustainable teams that get better over the time and actually potentially get even better after you've left. Like that, for me, that's quite a measure. Like I think about my previous, I guess, rack space, I feel like that continued to do very, very well after I left and hit some of the numbers that we'd been driving towards, and that for me is a measure of goodness. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that vulnerability is an important bit, but I do think what's also interesting is getting that balance. Like, you wouldn't want somebody, when something needs to get done, who just sits there and goes, I don't know what I'm doing. What do you think? What do you think? Oh, I'm very vulnerable here.
Hang on, I need 6 months to build trust. Come back to me later. And that was the point at the beginning is like there's a continuum or a spectrum, right? And you have to move up and down the spectrum almost situationally. But I think what we're talking about is, that. I mean, we all see different stress behaviours. We all have leaders that have come in and they've got 3 months to do something, right? And sometimes that needs to happen. But we're talking about how do you build, I call it the fabric of a culture that sustains. And generally, as much as we can talk about high pressure environments bringing out the best in people, and I agree, but when there's not trust, you see defensive behaviours, and defence doesn't generally bring out the best.
And I think it's about honesty then, isn't it? Because it's about saying, we're under the cosh here, we've got to get this done, we need to execute with speed over this particular thing. So I'm going to need to make some decisions that I can't, get the best out of all of you. And again, that's just building trust, isn't it? Because you're saying that's vulnerable in saying we're under the cosh. I've got to make these decisions. And it sort of brings that balance, maybe quite nice.
And I think that's easier to do if you've had a group and you've built the trust. I think you can still do it, but then you also got, like, I think about delivering like the cultural wins as well. So we'll probably talk a bit more about the kind of communicating well with people and doing what you say. And so you can do it in parallel, but it's easier to go fast with the right foundation.
So let's move on. We've done be authentic. We've done be vulnerable. Third one, be accepting. What's that all about?
Two things in my head. One is, so if you're early on in your people management career, the transition from an individual contributor to a manager is one of the hardest, I think, because often you become a leader or a manager in your area of expertise, and because you're probably very good at it. So it's very easy to want everybody to operate like you do or to your standard. Like, this is my bar, this is what quality looks like. And because you don't do it quite like I do, you're not hitting the bar. And I think trying to get crystal clear on the outcome. So I always think about also things like coaching. It's about, it's not about coaching people to your style. It's about coaching them to improve their performance in their style. So I think that the big thing is working out how you, I suppose, delegate outcomes versus activities, and you kind of let go of your way's the right way, and you move to there's loads of different ways to achieve an outcome. How can I get the best from somebody? So it's sort of accepting differences, and we could talk about all sorts of different diversity, right? But there's also just diversity in how we work and how we get stuff done. Yeah,
and I think that's really interesting. Delegate the outcome, not the activity. So being accepting doesn't mean my standards are lower.
Yes.
But what it means is that people will do things differently and in a different way, and often a better way that I haven't even thought about before.
Yeah.
And by accepting that people have got a difference of personality, a difference of approach, a difference in lived experience, whatever it might be, if you're delegating an outcome, not an activity, then that gives them the freedom to do it how they want to do it and still deliver the outcome that you accept.
And I think that's point two is that you've covered that really. Absolutely. I can't really reiterate your point more. It's all about letting people work in their way as long as the outcome is delivered.
And I remember there was a leader, I didn't work for them, but they came in, built a team, and basically built a team of themselves. You know, they'd hired little clones of themselves. So that then team became like the super version of this person. Now, of course, everybody has got strengths and weaknesses, right? If you're very results driven, so if we think about maybe discovery insights or some of those kind of psychological profiling, there's opposite sides of the wheel, and somebody that's very big picture might not be thinking about the detail. Somebody that's very detailed, not thinking about the big picture. Somebody that's very results driven, not thinking about the harmony of the team, for example. They might be opposites. Yeah. And so if you've just hired a team of people that are just like you, all of those weaknesses you've got are then magnified, and all those blind spots and things that you don't do so well are magnified. And I just remember seeing that and go, you could just see it from a mile off, but they couldn't see it because they're like, people that are really just like me.
Yeah, and I think you see it. That's where my mind was going a second ago. I think you see, team dynamics are really interesting. We've all led teams where, like, the star performer has found the next role, and everyone's a little bit worried about how that's going to go. And what typically happens is that people step up and fill the void in different ways, don't they? You see the next person really step up to take that on, and that, I think that's almost the acceptance part as well, is just understanding that there is a lot of different ways to organise a team to deliver the outcomes that you need.
Yeah,
and that will evolve over time as well, and it should.
Yeah, love it. So, be authentic, be vulnerable, be accepting.
Yeah, but not of low standards.
Mm-hmm. Be present. What do you think that's talking about?
Gift giving.
Be a present. Yeah, turn up dressed in wrapping paper, suits with Christmas trees on.
I think, I think that the present is an interesting one, particularly when we think when that book was written and where we are today with remote working and geographically dispersed teams and all of that good stuff. So being present if we go one-to-one, so we're in human form today, which would be a pleasure with the right company. And I think being present, like I've got, I'm sure we all have examples in our career that stand out massively to us of really awkward one-to-ones where you've felt maybe like you weren't the important person, or you came away feeling, well, what happened there? So I've got two examples going back a long time now. One was somebody was fairly addicted to their phone and would scroll their phone a lot during one-to-ones.
So this is your boss.
Yeah,
you're talking to them, and whilst you're talking to them,
in my one opportunity to meet with them monthly, if you think about it in those terms, and then often, in an important role and all of those good things. But I think we've all been there. Just, can you please put your phone down for 10 minutes and be with me and really listen? So I think that's one, just it really stands out to me, and I would imagine they probably weren't conscious of the effect that has. And then the other one was I was actually in a performance appraisal. It was a 45-minute, 1 hour meeting in person, and about halfway through, they just said, "Sorry, I need to go to the toilet." They used different language to that. A gentleman, my leader at the time. And, I was aware that they weren't really listening to anything I was saying for the first half an hour. And when they came back, they said, "Right, I can concentrate now." It's those...
Yeah. You weren't concentrating for the first 30 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. This might not be the right environment or the right group for me. So I think, and you and I, you touched on Strengths Finder, but if you were to look at positivity within those 26, 28 strengths, whatever it is, we'd probably have it fairly up there.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's my top one. I think,
shock horror.
Yeah.
Who knew? I think in interactions, you give or drain energy. And I think that's the other thing with being present. I often talk about leadership shadow when I talk to leaders. Are you bringing up the energy levels, or are you a drain within a team? And I think that doesn't just apply to leaders, but if we talk about presence in leadership, even in a one-to-one, you can bounce out going, "He really cares, he listens, we can do this thing," or you can come out going,
And it makes such an impact. I remember that story you're talking about, the boss that was scrolling through the phone. I remember you telling me that story, and it might have been at the pub. And let's just say the passion with which you delivered the story, we've made it nice for prime time.
Yeah, because I'm authentic. I've chosen my language slightly differently. Yeah.
And it had a real impact on you. And I find it with me, that if there's somebody that's just scrolling through the phone, and I find if I'm doing it, if I'm ever doing, I don't listen as hard. I miss things. I don't get the nuance. I don't get the detail. It's just reminded me. I was watching a clip of a podcast. I think, and I'm going to try and say his name right. It was the Ramesh Ranganathan. I think I've got his surname right there. Yes. I was listening to some clips of his podcast just the other day, and he had a writer on there, and the writer was saying, right, people are writers now have got to pass the second screen test. And you're like, well, what's the second screen test? And that is that they have to assume that people, whilst they're watching their show on telly, have also got a second screen out and are scrolling through Amazon or Vinted or whatever it is. And therefore
Tesco Weekly Shop.
Tesco Weekly Shop.
Quite common in our house. Yeah.
And therefore you have to dumb down the script.
Yeah.
You have to make the plot less nuanced. You have to get the characters to reveal some of the big things that historically you wouldn't have had to do. And nor should you for people with intellect that are concentrating. But actually, and I think that's just a bit sad. So this idea that actually a great way of building trust is to just get rid of your distraction.
And call them out sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think I often have fire drills, I lead operational teams, we're customer facing. And so if something pops in on Teams when I'm doing a one-to-one over Teams, it is possible that I might have to drop something, right?
Yeah.
But call it out. So rather than just be distracted over here, look, and I've had it in a performance appraisal with somebody before, this is really important to me, but I need to do this urgent thing over here. We'll reschedule. And people often, again, depending on your job title, people are like, I know you're busy, don't worry. No, your performance appraisal is important to me and we will do it. We're just going to move the time. So I think that's the other side of it. I think it's much easier to be distracted now when it's remote and it's about, it's a bit like you calling out your notes at the beginning of this. You're calling out that you're referring to something as well. You're not just distracted, right? It's a similar principle.
And there's little things you can do. I went out to the pub last night with a mate. The England game was on. I can't face the telly if we're having a chat. So otherwise, I'm just going to watch the England game.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to. I wanted to talk to him,
Yeah.
It was only a qualifier. It wasn't an important England game. And so I just had to sit and face a slightly different way. Otherwise, I don't know. No, it would have just been it. So
but you missed a great Saka goal. But,
I did see the other good one. Who was it? Eze. I did see him. Anyway, football aside. Now, that's right on a macro level, but we're all geographically dispersed. We may be working with teams, with big groups. What does it mean about being present, not just when you're in a one-to-one teams meeting, not when you're just in a one-to-one face-to-face?
Yeah.
What does being present mean there?
I think there's quite a few different elements to that, some of which I'm all right at. Sometimes I catch myself and I can be a bit better. If I go back previously, I used to be in the States probably every quarter, had quite a large team in Texas. And so for me, it was about I'd normally do 10 days at a time, and I would spend some time out there and we'd have some unplugged or whatever, try and call it something interesting.
Yes.
A cup of tea with Ben to bring out the British, element or whatever it might be. So I think some of it's about physically being present when you can. That's not always possible, particularly with, post-COVID travel budgets and all that good stuff. But I think that's one thing. Also, when you're there, spend a bit of time. We had a leader back in the day that would just wander in, quite a senior guy, and would sit on a desk and chat to people. Had a good understanding of what was going on around the world, and so could talk a bit about what was going on in different countries with different people, those types of things. So I think being present is listening, being interested, and actually being there. And that's a physical example. The other thing that I've done a lot in the past is monthly videos, or it wasn't an acquisition, but there was a particular group that were coming in. I did a little video update to welcome them. I generally do like a Christmas video, end of year video to sort of celebrate. And then I would do monthly updates. So again, people can hear, and it's not an ego thing. It's just I think people do want to understand, and they want to hear it from the horse's mouth sometimes. So I think that's important.
I agree. And I used to do similar. I used to do weekly videos to my team, just a little 2 or 3 minute video.
Yeah.
The team I was managing were consultants that were based all around the place. And it made a difference. At the end of the week, this is what's gone on.
Yeah.
So-and-so's done this. Just 2 or 3 minutes, because rather than just an email, you get the tone, the voice, the smile, the whatever it is. And even though perhaps you're not building a bond, a 2-way bond with that person, they're still bonding with you a little bit. Yeah. And that's really helpful. And if you've got a big group, and just to do that regularly, they build like when you feel like you know the podcast you listen to, you feel like you know the host, even though they've got no idea who you are. You feel like you know them well.
Yeah. I had a guy come up to me in Austin airport and introduce his newborn to me, and we've never met, but he used to get my monthly videos. Obviously felt it was great. I mean, how awesome is that? Here's my wife, here's my newborn. And I know the name, and I know, but I wouldn't have picked him out.
Yeah.
But just to have that I think that's just a nice. It's not business oriented. It's not tangible in that sense, but actually it's a thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing I found, having moved from a couple of companies over the last sort of decade or so, you don't always realise the impact of these things until after you go. Because people don't, or particularly the more senior you get as well, but actually anyway, as a leader, people don't always give you the feedback, but they will tell you when it goes. They don't always appreciate it in the moment, but they do afterwards. So I guess a little message there would be, if it feels good, kind of trust your gut and keep going with it. And there was a couple of leaders, managers within the current place where they would do what I would call a Friday rah-rah. So kind of to your point, here's what we've achieved today, well done team. And you're sending people into the weekend. If anything, you're trying to kind of offset the Sunday blues. Do you know what I mean? I've got to come back to a massive support queue on Monday, or whatever it might be, or I've got to dig deep. But actually you go, we can be quite proud of that. You can have a moment of reflection. And again, some of those leaders would just have a 15-minute Teams call and just, let's have a cup of tea and how was your week?
Yeah.
Which is a nice way to sort of close the week. And I think like good news Fridays, bad news Mondays is the way I've always thought about that.
Yeah. Right, we've done 4 of them. We have be authentic, be vulnerable, be accepting, be present. Final one.
Yep.
Be useful.
Oh, the trickiest one.
My wife definitely thinks that this is a strength I don't have.
Yes. She said useless, I think. In that context, be useful. Where my mind goes immediately is that transition into management. I think when you're an individual contributor, being useful is doing the thing.
Yeah.
When you lead people, all of a sudden you don't feel useful anymore because the other people are doing the thing, and if anything, you feel a bit guilty that you're not. I mean, there's inordinate amounts of admins and calls and other things that you have to do, but it doesn't feel like you're being useful in a lot of that. So I think it's an HBR article around monkeys on your back. That's a good one to have a look at. But it's, how do you add value to your team without doing their work? So a couple of specific things. One-to-ones. Early in career, often we want to take all the actions for our direct reports. Actually, it should be the other way round. It should almost be, well, how do you think you can solve that? Come back to me with a proposal, and by all means coach and add value there, but don't do it for people.
Yeah, you still got to delegate. So
you have to.
It's being useful. Being useful doesn't mean I'm now going to do everything for you, because I used to be the best at doing it, and now I've been promoted into a leadership role because I used to be best at doing the thing.
Yes.
Now I keep doing the thing to be really useful.
Yeah.
You've got to change your approach when you're now leading a group to do it. Yeah.
And it will also lead to not doing your job very well because you will be the bottleneck.
Yeah.
So I think where if I think about where I would add value, there's probably two main areas when I think about my people, if you like. One is I've got a star performer, they're doing really well. My job is to run in the corridor ahead of them and open as many doors, before they get there as possible. What does that mean? Understand their career path and be well networked within a company, let's say. And it's all about trying to get those, they can benefit from my relationships. They can go and have catch-ups. If they want to learn, focus on a particular competency, I know who the role model is. If they want to go to a particular part of the business, I've got a network and I can get those conversations going. And then coaching is the other one. So that could be a high performer or perhaps, middle of the road, or even somebody that's not quite where they need to be. I add value by two things, right? Confidence and awareness, I think. You're trying to build somebody's awareness if they really can't see the blind spot, or if they're good, you're just building their confidence and off they go. So I think adding value is with and through people more often than direct in management and leadership roles.
And so I remember you when we did the episode yesterday. You had a great story about the pen, about leading a team. Tell that story for a second time.
Sure.
Whilst it's recording.
Great. Excellent. It's important to allow you to fail, Ben. I guess really simplistically, I had a group of people. We were creating services, intellectual property and all this good stuff. And we needed to make a business plan for the next 12 months, but loaded for the next 3 in terms of what we're going to create, how we're going to create it, what the audience was, how we'd roll it out, all the good stuff. So this person was a technical legend, very, very capable. And what we did was we met in person. So we had that luxury in a room with a whiteboard and a pen. And what I did was in the first half of the day, I owned the pen. And so I would put a bit of structure. We'd have the conversations, but I was scribing and directing a little bit. We had lunch, and then the pen went to this person. And then actually that's where we saw, a few things happen, but really he owned it, and it was better than I could have thought of, and also he was the guy that was going to be delivering the plan. So he was able to feel really part of that plan and actually put the kind of meat on the bones and all of that good stuff. And so I think it's a good example. I think that can vary. If somebody's less experienced, you might check in with them more regularly and coach and course correct. And if they're good, you let that timeline out a little bit further, give them more room, get out of their way often when they're better than you.
And it's interesting because this theme's come up a few times. It's about balance, isn't it? With some of it, sometimes what you need to do is you need to give a bit of energy, you need to give a bit of clarity, and you need to get people rally around the thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes the balance then is stepping back and going, I haven't got any of that. There's the pen, figuratively.
Yeah.
Now this is the time for you to contribute, lead, come up with your diversity of thought, do whatever you want to do, and it's you trying to balance that, so you get that balance.
Yeah,
and I quite like this idea, that leadership is say it properly. Leadership is achieving results through people. That's what it's all about.
Yes.
So it is about achieving results. It's not just about being friends, but it's also saying this is bigger than something that one person on their own can do, and it needs to be achieved through people. So you need to create that mechanism for people to do their best work. So it's that leadership is achieving results through people, and that often takes balance across all of these things.
I always say with and through people, and that point is important. Leadership isn't looseness and I just create environments where people do their best work, which is an excuse for not really getting involved or knowing what's going on. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about absolutely knowing what's going on, knowing enough to coach people where they need it and give them enough room when they need it, but being, knowing what the results need to be and knowing your people and knowing your results. And you have to be close enough to make informed decisions to drive those results. Yeah.
Really interesting. Do you know what? We've covered all 5 there. Looking at the clock, I think we've run out of time. So, should we just wrap up the episode? Do you want to summarise what would be your key takeaways from this episode?
Results are absolutely the thing that have to happen. The way that you do that, where you create forever companies, or you create environments where people keeps getting better, and everyone looks and goes, how is it they make that look easy? That is the right high performance culture built on trust. And those 5 areas are a pretty good way to think about it.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think that the reason I really like these is they align to my values. I like to be a nice human, and I like to achieve stuff. And these are a great way to hang your thoughts on, a great way to achieve great stuff and be a great human and have fun at work and have relationships with people.
It is possible. And I think we should all keep pushing.
Yeah. And then I think that other bit that's come up really is just about balance. It's about knowing, right, when do I need to give clarity and direction? When do I need to get everybody else's opinions? When do I need to say, let's do this? And when do I need to say I don't know the answer. I'm not so good at this bit. This is where I need you to.
Yeah.
And it's getting that balance. We don't want to be a wet lettuce
I don't
know what I'm doing. But at the same time, we don't want to be it's my way or the highway, because that's going to destroy
good tone.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, I mean, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much for coming for the second time.
Pleasure.
To record this. If people want to get in touch with you, like the sort of things that you've said, how can people get hold of you?
LinkedIn is the best way. And 2026 will be an interesting year for me. So keep an eye on LinkedIn. We'll see what
I'll
happens.
pop it in the show notes so that people can make sure they've got the right Ben Caird, so they can click on the link there. So final thing for me to say, thank you so much for coming in for a second time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Lovely. Thanks, Ben.
Don't go yet. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and rate the show. It really helps us grow and book new great guests. And remember, if the podcast isn't enough for you and you want weekly microlearning delivered straight to your inbox, sign up to the Tech World Human Skills Weekly. Head over to www.techworldhumanskills.com to sign up.